Acknowledging Milwaukee's indigenous roots. Before we dive into the roots of Milwaukee's neighborhoods, we need to acknowledge that this land has always been indigenous land. The word Milwaukee comes from the Anishinaabe word meaning good earth or good land. This is the language spoken by the Three Fires Alliance, which includes the Ojibwe, Ottawa, and Potawatomi. Native people in early history. If you're from Milwaukee, you might recognize the Potawatomi name. The Potawatomi and their allied tribes built villages along Lake Michigan's coast. Long before missionaries, colonizers, and immigrants arrived, the native tribes made this land their home. Other notable tribes who lived in the area include the Ho-Chunk and Menominee. The role of marshland and wild rice. The coastline mostly consisted of marshland. Before settlers filled the marshes with dirt, the marshland provided an abundant source of food. Wild rice, for example, grew along Milwaukee's riverbanks, and native peoples harvested it every year. Wild rice held deep significance for the Menominee and Ojibwe, who passed down traditions of harvesting and preparing it. When the settlers filled in the marshlands and industrialized Milwaukee, they destroyed the wild rice habitat. Native Americans once gathered wild rice in what is now the Harbor View area just east of Walker's Point. Tens of thousands of acres of marshy wetlands used to stretch across the area. Today, Milwaukee still carries reminders of its indigenous roots in its place names. Wauwatosa takes its name from the Potawatomi chief Wauwatosa. Kinnickinnick River, an avenue, known to the locals as KK, comes from the word for a traditional tobacco mixture used in ceremonies. Menominee River in Valley honor the Menominee tribe, also known as the Wild Rice People. Milwaukee's indigenous history runs deep, and we can't talk about the birth of its neighborhoods without first recognizing the native people who took care of the land long before the city ever existed. Milwaukee's neighborhood map. Each of Milwaukee's neighborhoods could easily have its own episode. I want to highlight 3 words specifically that had some of the most influence on Milwaukee's history. When Milwaukee incorporated in 1846, the city divided itself into 5 wards for governing purposes. Each ward elected its own representatives to the city council. Milwaukee had just gone through the Bridge War in 1845, a mini civil war between Juneautown on the east side of the Milwaukee River and Kilbournetown on the west side. A third town, Walker's Point, also played a role. Although Walker's Point wasn't part of the main conflict, its strategic location, connecting Juneautown and Kilbournetown, put it politically and literally in the middle. The Bridge War's lasting effects. Both sides wanted to become the city center. As a result, they destroyed several bridges in an attempt to control trade and transportation. The Bridge War left a lasting mark on Milwaukee. The founders of Juneautown and Kilbournetown had intentionally built their street grids so they wouldn't line up with each other. Because of that, Milwaukee still has a confusing street layout, filled with interesting intersections. As tensions escalated, the state finally stepped in and forced both sides to incorporate into one city. The original 5 wards helped unify Milwaukee after the Bridge War. This is a sketch of Milwaukee's map today, and this is a sketch of the original 5 wards. The first ward included what is known today as the Lower East Side of Milwaukee and Juneautown. The second ward included the Central West Side of the Milwaukee River in Kilbournetown. The ward whose name has stuck around today, the third ward, is the area below the first ward between the Milwaukee River and Lake Michigan. The fourth ward included the area northwest of Kilbournetown. And the fifth ward became the new name of Walker's Point. The first ward's southern border started around here, and its northern border stretched all the way up to Bradford Beach. If you look at modern maps, you can see how the borders of the original wards eventually became many of Milwaukee's main roads. Demographics and economy of the first ward. The first ward attracted a wide range of people, both in terms of wealth and nationality. Wealthier residents, like those who made a fortune in the grain exchange or worked as lawyers and bankers, lived closer to the lake. Many of them traveled from the East Coast in search of economic opportunity. Meanwhile, closer to the river, working-class families settled. Polish, Irish, German, and Sicilian immigrants built their communities there. The iconic Brady Street neighborhood. Arguably, the most iconic neighborhood within the first ward is Brady Street. Immigrant-owned businesses thrived here, especially along Brady Street itself. Salons, hat shops, delis, restaurants, and cleaners lined the street. In this historic neighborhood, everything you needed to live was right nearby. Business owners often lived above their shops, a pattern you can still see today in architecture. Shops on the ground floor, homes above. Right along the northern border of the first ward, the Oriental Theater opened in the 1920s, and it still stands today. The transformation of the first ward. Today, what was once the first ward is known more commonly as the Lower East Side and part of downtown. Businesses continue to flourish, but the population has shifted. Families have largely moved out, and young professionals and students have moved in. Close to the lake, you can still find many beautifully maintained historic homes. The early days of the Third Ward. The fun and artistic Third Ward we know today looked very different when it was first incorporated. On the east side near the lake, factories and warehouses spring up. On the west side, near the river, some of Milwaukee's very first homes were built. The Third Ward has a wild history. Fights and fires were common. Violence happened so often that people nicknamed it the Bloody Ward. Following the Great Irish Famine, many Irish immigrants settled in the Third Ward. They quickly became the largest ethnic group in the neighborhood, taking on labor-intensive jobs in the factories and warehouses. Because of this, people also called the area the Irish Ward. Tragedy strikes in the Irish community. Unfortunately, the Irish community faced several major tragedies. In 1860, about 400 people, many from the Irish community, died when a ship sank in Lake Michigan. Then in 1892, a massive fire swept through the Third Ward, devastating the Irish neighborhood. Most of the homes were made of wood, and the fire left many residents homeless or forced them to relocate. After the fire, more Sicilian and Italian immigrants moved into the area. Over time, the Irish community lost its dominance in the Third Ward. The Third Ward today. Today, the Third Ward has kept its historic name and borders, but the neighborhood has transformed in huge ways. It has become one of Milwaukee's economic and cultural centers. Known for its thriving arts and dining scenes, the neighborhood still holds on to its historic charm. The same brick buildings that once housed factories now buzz with small businesses, community spaces, and schools.
If we head directly south of the 3rd Ward, across the river we find the 5th Ward.
During the incorporation of Milwaukee's original 5 wards, the 5th Ward was known as Walker's Point. Just as Juneautown and Kilbourtown were named after their founders, so was Walker's Point. Solomon Juneau, Byron Kilbourne, and George Walker are the 3 founders of Milwaukee. George Walker's land and early development. While Juneautown and Kilbourtown were more developed, George Walker's land was less so at the time of incorporation. Due to issues with his land title, Walker couldn't sell plots until 7 years after settling there. First settlers of Walker's Point. The first developments in Walker's Point began on South 3rd Street.
The first settlers in the area were Czech, German, Irish, and New Englanders, or Yankees as they called them.
A working class hub. The 5th Ward developed a strong working class community. The area became known as the machine shop of the world due to its thriving machinery industry. Many of these industries, including brewing, machinery, and the dockyards, remain in Walker's Point today. Arrival of Mexican immigrants.
In the early 1900s, following the Mexican Revolution in 1910, Mexican immigrants settled in Walker's Point in search of better opportunities.
Many worked in local tanneries and the railroad industry. Prior to their arrival, a workers' strike at the Pfister-Vogel tannery had been in progress. The new Mexican workers unknowingly took on contracts that helped break the strike. These first Mexican immigrants were nicknamed Los Primeros, or the first ones. The growth of the Latino community. The Mexican community in Walker's Point continued to grow. As workers earned money, they began moving into nearby homes. Community leader Federico Herrera founded Milwaukee's first Spanish newspaper and mutual aid society. Due to labor shortages during World War II, Mexican workers were brought into Wisconsin, further expanding the community. Latino Civil Rights Movement. In the 1960s, Cesar Chavez visited Milwaukee to organize local farm workers during a rise in the Latino civil rights activism. The destruction of communities for the freeway. Much of the original Mexican neighborhood was razed to make way for the freeway. Similarly, the neighborhood where the Irish community relocated after the 3rd Ward fire, called Torrey Hill, was also turned down for freeway construction. In fact, many working class and immigrant neighborhoods were displaced for the freeway. Relocation and cultural integration. The Latino community in Walker's Point relocated further south to an area that had originally been home to the Polish community. Interestingly, both were largely Roman Catholic, both upheld strong family values, both faced prejudice due to their rural roots and skill sets, but both worked hard, often sending money back to their families. Walker's Point today.
While the 5th Ward is now divided into several neighborhoods, Walker's Point remains distinct.
It's a neighborhood known for its vibrant murals with artworks on almost every corner. Many of these murals celebrated the neighborhood's rich Latino history, and the area's art scene is well recognized. The role of industry and infrastructure in shaping neighborhoods. While immigration and politics played key roles in the formation of Milwaukee's neighborhoods, industrialization and public infrastructure projects were just as important. As early as the 1850s, the city's location at the conjunction of 3 rivers in Lake Michigan made it ideal for shipping and manufacturing.
These industries didn't just bring jobs, they shaped the geography of the city itself.
Railroad lines and streetcar routes determined where people could live and work. The early public transit system allowed workers to commute from residential neighborhoods into the city's industrial core. More neighborhoods, like the Bayview to the south, River West just west of the Milwaukee River, and even portions of the South Side emerged along these lines and have grown into distinct communities. As factories expanded in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, housing demands increased and homes were built rapidly nearby. Developers built shotgun houses, duplexes, and row homes to pack as many workers as possible close to their jobs. Bronzeville and the Great Migration.
One neighborhood that deserves special mention is Bronzeville, Milwaukee's historic Black neighborhood.
Starting in the 1910s and increasing through the 1940s, the Great Migration brought thousands of African Americans to northern cities, including Milwaukee, in search of work and an escape from Jim Crow segregation in the South. Most of Milwaukee's Black residents were funneled into a tightly bounded area on the near north side. This area, centered around Walnut Street, came to be known as Bronzeville. The term Bronzeville was popularized in cities like Chicago as a way to celebrate African Americans' identity. Bronze was used as a dignified description for the skin tone of Black Americans. It was much more than a residential zone. It was a culture hub. Bronzeville was home to jazz clubs, churches, newspapers, and Black-owned businesses that gave the community a strong sense of identity and resilience in the face of segregation and systematic discrimination. Like Walker's Point and Torrey Hill, much of Bronzeville was demolished in the mid-20th century due to freeway construction and urban renewal programs. Homes and businesses were razed and residents were displaced. Legacy and revitalization. In recent years, there has been a push to revitalize Bronzeville and honor its cultural legacy.
New businesses, community centers, and art installations are working to reclaim this important part of Milwaukee's history.
In summation, Milwaukee's neighborhoods are deeply rooted in history, shaped by waves of immigrants and indigenous communities who lived here long before the city ever existed. From the marshlands that once provided resources to the native tribes, to the immigrant-rich streets of Brady Street, and the transformation of the Third Ward into an arts hub, these neighborhoods tell the story of resilience, change, and cultural blending. As we continue to recognize Milwaukee's diverse heritage, it's important to understand the foundation upon which it has grown from. There are many locations, stories, and neighborhoods that were not included in this episode. So I'm asking you to get out and explore and honor more of these stories. Whether through the architecture, the name of the streets, or the vibrant cultures that continue to thrive in these communities.
Milwaukee's past is waiting for you to discover it. So get outside and take a walk through its history.